Good morning. This is the Blaine's World podcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can also listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can get more information as well at the website www.blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And to that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my two guests tonight. They're going to be talking about a program they're going to be offering in the near future. And they are Chuck Fink and Michael Reno Harrell. And guys, you can wave to all your fans and friends who might be watching this. So that's Chuck and Michael. And I should mention that Chuck Fink dove into the art of storytelling at the age of 64. Wait, you're not 64 now, Chuck? I found this hard to believe.
I just had a birthday and I turned a little bit over 72.
Okay, you could have
Just a
fooled
little
me.
over.
Exactly. He shares his talent throughout the Asheville area and Jonesboro, Tennessee. Previously, he lived in Cincinnati as an executive consultant, organizational development specialist. He hosted a radio show, Storyville, and now together with his wife, Cindy, they host a popular podcast, In Love with the Finks. Michael Reno Harrell is an award-winning songwriter, published author, nationally known storyteller, and visual artist. He's from southern Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, where all those things are as much a part of life as breathing. His talents have taken him to 44 states and several foreign countries over his 54-year career. His work is based on the experiences that reflect the culture of the mountain roots. And I'm glad you're with us, Michael, because the one thing you haven't done yet is been on the Blaine's World show, right? This is the first time?
It's
Okay.
it's great to be on Blaine's World.
Okay, well, we're glad to have you. And I don't have to say it about Chuck because I think Chuck, Michael set the record. I think this is like 53rd appearance or 54th appearance. You've been guest on one of my shows, Chuck?
Yeah, I expect a raise after this one.
Okay, exactly.
At least parking.
Okay, well, damn, you had to remind me about that, Michael. And since I was talking to Chuck and before, let me just jump right in with you initially, Michael. And the question I always ask, as a kid, you grew up where?
I grew well. If not to put too fine a point on it, I was conceived in North Carolina and born in Tennessee, so I'm bilingual. I grew up in a little town of Morristown, Tennessee, just on the other side of the Blue Ridge Mountains over there. My family's all from the Appalachians, though. My dad's from Mitchell County, North Carolina. My mom's from Buncombe County.
As a
And I
kid,
don't know how long our family's been here, but I think we go back to the North Carolina thoughts. We've been here a long time.
as a kid, when you were growing up, did you always know you wanted to be a storyteller?
No, had no idea what it was.
What
I
got you
knew
into?
I hung around with a lot of old guys. When I was a kid, like when I was 10, my best friends were 40 and 80. I hung around with the old guys because they told stories. I didn't realize that's what they were doing. I thought they were just talking about their lives. And it turns out you can make a living doing that. You know, who knew?
Okay,
But
so
yeah, I grew up in that mountain culture. A lot of campfires and a lot of mountaintops and a lot of late nights and that sort of thing.
so when did you start storytelling?
Uh, well, I started out as in the folk scare, the early '60s. Uh, I was, I had watched a lot of movies that my mom always wanted me to watch. Those movies from the '40s that she grew up listening to the big band sounds, and I heard Gene Krupa, and I thought, boy, that'd be fun to do. So I decided I was going to be a jazz drummer. And the Southern Appalachian Mountains in 1958 were a hotbed of jazz. But anyway, we called it going home. Tennessee was never home to my family. We were just sort of there because of my dad's work. So every other Friday, Mom would say we're going home, and we'd get back to Western North Carolina. And I walked into my cousin Patsy's bedroom one evening. She's six months older than I, and she said, "Listen to this." And she had the Kingston Trio's first album.
Sure.
And when I listened to it, I, I didn't know what to do about it. It was just consumed me. So I went home that weekend, and Monday morning, my brother took me to the pawn shop in Morristown, and I traded my drums for a K guitar.
So
And that was the beginning. I started out as a folk singer. Bob Dylan kicked the door open, and before that, it had to be, you know, a child ballad or something to be a real folk song. Uh, but Bob Dylan, as I say, kicked that door open, and then Eric Anderson and Ian Tyson and all of them came in. And I decided immediately when I heard Ian Tyson that that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to write like that.
What's interesting
So
is what you're saying is in terms of, I never saw the connection before, but I guess all songwriters are storytellers, and I guess vice versa. You know,
absolutely.
it's just a
And
difference. Yeah.
the thing about it is, once I started trying to sing my own songs out in public, you know, when I was playing seafood bars and places like that, I thought maybe if I told people a story about the song, that they would be more interested in listening to the song. So about 2004, I think, something like that, my good friend David Holt and I were down at his place at Seabrook Island and writing songs for his upcoming project. And he kept telling me, he said, "Man, you ought to get into storytelling." And I knew that he did a lot of schools and things like that. But I said, "Well, I don't know any stories." He said, "Well, your introductions are longer than your songs." So I delved into it, found out more about it, heard Catherine Tucker Wyndham, changed my life again. And so 3 years later, I was a featured teller or a new voice at the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro. And
Okay.
it just took off from there.
Is that when you started sort of stopping the singing and then did almost the storytelling full
Never
time?
stopped the singing. All my stories, the way my stories are constructed is I'm always been a songwriter. So I write a song about something that I'm interested in, and then back up and figure out what the story would be for that song. So the story might be 30 minutes and the song 3, but the whole story always ends with the song.
Now, do you ever reverse that? Do you ever start with the story and then the song?
No, no, very, very, very seldom. I could maybe I've recorded way over 200 songs, and I'd say that might have happened twice.
So out of the
It's always the song first because it's so condensed, it's so pure in a 3-minute form that it leaves you all this room to expand and add nuance and character and all that.
so out of
That's
the
just how we all have a different, approach, but that's always been mine.
well, if I can ask you, in terms of the songs and the stories, how many stories do you have?
Oh, I don't know.
Ballpark.
How many do you need? uh, I think most of us who work nationally, you've probably, hopefully, got about 8 hours of decent material.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have 8 hours today, so we're not going
Right.
to go through all of
A
it.
typical storytelling festival would be Friday night, 4 storytellers. Each of you do 30 minutes. So that's basically a 2-hour show with an intermission. On Saturday, you would do that at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 6 o'clock in the evening. So I've only done 2 hours worth of material in a whole weekend of storytelling.
Well, you know,
And this is at Jonesboro, right? Right, Michael?
Jonesboro is very unusual in that Jonesboro is in 4/10. Basically, there are 5, one little one too, but it's from 4/10, and they all start at 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday, and you go an hour, half hour off, hour, half hour off, lunch, hour, half hour off, hour, half hour off, hour, half hour off, and then that's basically the show for the day, and then you do some evening things. But typically at Jonesboro, you do about an hour on Friday because they're all split sets. You get 2 storytellers in each hour. Then on Saturday, they're all solo sets. So you do 57 minutes, actually. They run like a German train schedule over there. So when they give you your schedule, it's 27 minutes and 57 minutes because it takes 3 minutes to introduce you. And it starts and ends on the minute. And that, if you can't do that, you can't be a
well,
professional.
it's funny you said that, Michael, because that's one of the things Chuck and I think, agree on. One of the few things, Chuck, you and I agree on. But we used to do just straight radio shows, and you're absolutely right. It had to be exactly 28 minutes, and you had
Oh,
to
yeah.
end it. There was no play. Yet with the podcast, you have the flexibility. And Chuck, let me use that as a perfect way for you to talk a little bit about where folks will get a chance to see Michael in the area, because I should mention Chuck, a good friend of mine, has had many different careers, and now he's into this whole storytelling thing. And not only you storytelling, Chuck, but you're also producing shows. And why don't you talk a little bit about the one upcoming?
Sure. I also teach classes, and most of this is now taking place at the Weaverville Community Center. It's brand new. It sits high on a hill over Lake Louise, and the interior is just beautiful. So I've been, let's see, we started all the entertainment at this community center with a storytelling show, and that was in October of 21. Since then, this will be our 9th show. And all I can tell folks, this is as big as it gets in storytelling. Together with Michael Reno Harrell, we have Josh Goforth. Separately, they're fantastic teller musicians. Together, this will be the first time in public that Michael and Josh have performed together. So it's a very, very large event. And frankly, we're expecting more people than we can hold. So as a result, in order to attend, we suggest you go to Eventbrite. We have a link. And on April the 1st at 11 a.m., you click on that link to reserve 1 or 2 tickets for the show that's going to be on April the 20th from 7 to 8:30. We hold about 155 seats. If more people show up than have registered, we also have an outdoor patio next to the room, so folks will be able to see and hear as well. And all I can tell you is the buzz, the excitement around Weaverville and the community center is through the roof. We are so excited that Michael Reno Harrell and Josh Goforth agreed to perform together for the first time in wonderful Weaverville. So thank you, Michael. You have no idea how much this means to us.
Well, you don't know how much it means to me and Josh, because we've known each other for many years. David Holt has been the connection between us for years. So David and I used to do a lot of events together. We did in Waynesville for several years. We did their Mountain Craft Festival, and Josh was always with David. So Josh and I got to be good friends there. It's continued on, and then he got into storytelling, and he and I, we see each other in California and Texas and Alabama, but hardly ever in North Carolina. So we've worked together. It's our first real show together, but not the first time we've performed together, because usually at storytelling festivals, if he's on stage, I'll come up and do something with him. We'll riff a little something. Then he'll come up and do something with me, because we just enjoy being together. Our background, there's a difference in our age, but there's no difference in our background. We both come from Appalachian Mountain families, close families, storytellers, same grandfather stories, different place, you know. And our music backgrounds are so similar in that we both started out in acoustic music, Appalachian acoustic music. I played in bluegrass bands forever. He did too. We both played in folk trios. We played in bands. We've done solo work. So our backgrounds are so similar to begin with. And we just really admire each other's work so much. We're each other's biggest fans. I mean.
Now, Michael, if I can check out the rumor, is that you're also now trying to get Chuck into becoming a musician as well, and are we going to get Chuck to sing at his next storytelling gig?
Yeah, the only reason we agreed to do the show is if Chuck would do that.
Okay.
Well, Michael, Blaine, let me tell you, when I sing in the shower, the tiles fall off. That's how wonderful a singer I am. But if I may, just very quickly, we've all mentioned David Holt, and David is very special to both Josh. He discovered Josh when Josh was in the 8th grade, and David was performing in a school, and he noticed the talent, and he mentored Josh throughout the rest of the time. And Michael, you can also attest to this. I think you and David are very, very good friends. And I met David. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, David and I met in 1969 backstage at the Asheville Mountain Dance and Folk Festival. He and his friend Steve Keith had been in San Francisco, and a fellow by the name of Ralph Stanley had come out there and just blown them away. And so David went up and asked, he said, where can I learn to do what you do? And Ralph said, well, the only place I know how to learn to do what I do is to come to where I'm from. And he said, the Southern Appalachian Mountains. So they did. And David always maintained that I was the first person to welcome him to North Carolina.
And if I'm not mistaken, Michael, you've also said of David that he is the ultimate keeper of the Appalachian culture. through his music over the years. I think you've said that. And
I
to
say it all
that
the
point,
time.
just for everyone's sake, David Holt was originally from Texas. He was educated in California. And after that comment that Michael just referred to, he moved here, and he's a treasure. I had him on my show Storyville, as I did Michael. And we just hit up a friendship, and now I have a small men's group, and David is one of the 6 members, and we've become very close. So the power of storytelling is connection.
Yes.
And Mike,
David, I say it all the time. David has done more to promote and preserve our mountain culture than anybody ever born here.
and Michael, if I can ask you, for the benefit of folks who aren't familiar with storytelling, can you give maybe just an idea of what to expect when they come to the show that Chuck was mentioning? What's going to happen?
What's going to happen is you're going to see 2 really good friends on stage just having fun, and hopefully it's contagious. Again, our lives are so similar that our stories seem to almost just be a continuation as one to another. And Josh plays and when I say he plays 20 instruments, I mean he really does, honestly. He's a virtuoso. I've never met anyone that's so intuitive and so natural a musician as Josh. And with his sense of humor and his sense of timing, when we get together to rehearse, it's not rehearsal at all. It's just having fun. And that's just what it's going to be when we get together. He's so good at what he does that anything that I do, he's right there. And it's just so natural for us. And we have so much fun doing it that I can't see how it might not be a little contagious. We're so similar in our backgrounds and our love of storytelling and music that it's just a joy to be together. So I hope that.
And Blaine, if I may, Blaine, if I may, also, I just want to tag in the audiences at the town center. We fill up every show. The audience are just sharing love all the time. Our last show that was almost as big as this one, I understand, was a history maker. We had 4 black tellers on stage for the first time. And Ray Christian, who is an incredible storyteller, said it was the first time ever that there were 4 black tellers. And that's what we're attracting at Weaverville. Along with Ray, we had Becky Stone, who's a very accomplished teller, and then a couple of local guys who are also very accomplished. So in Weaverville, we're making history by having shows like that and shows like the one coming up on April the 20th with Michael and Josh. We want to have folks throughout this area appreciate and get into storytelling at a level that can only be found in other places like Jonesboro. So we're very proud, and we're so happy that we finally stuck his hand behind his back enough so that he said, okay, I'll do it. No, it wasn't like that at all. I'm kidding.
Something that Michael,
all he had to do was mention Josh and I was in.
Okay. But something that I'm hearing, which is really cool, I hadn't realized it, that you both use the word fun, and even Chuck, in terms of teaching, is that what happens when people are taking a course in storytelling? They have fun with it?
Oh, absolutely. We had the last one was at the end of last year, and we just had a ball. And then we had a show for the graduates of that class. First time ever they told in public, not only did they rock the house, but they actually made a little bit of tip money too. It took me like 5 years to make a nickel storytelling. So,
well, Chuck,
yeah, it's all about having fun. By the way, Michael, at our age, if we're not having fun, why the hell are we doing anything?
But Chuck, you have to fess up, though. You said before you made money. Michael, I don't know the story, but Chuck and I also go back a little bit, and at one time he tried comedy, and Chuck actually that career cost Chuck money because he had to pay people to come to the show, So, right? Here you don't have to pay to come to it. Michael, let me ask you this question.
One thing, just to answer that, truth be told, I did try stand up until they told me to shut up and sit down.
Okay. And are you able to do that with storytelling? Or Michael, if he's playing an instrument, I guess can sit down. Chuck, do storytellers ever sit down?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
some sit, some stand. I'm a ranter and raver. I kind of go back and forth on the stage till people get dizzy and pass out. With Michael and Josh, because they're at a microphone playing, my guess is you guys don't rattle back and forth too much.
We sit because I'm 75 and my back. I've been sitting for my shows for about 20 years now, and so we just sit on stools and just riff, just have fun and bat things back and forth.
Michael, let me ask you this question. You mentioned a whole bunch of songs you've written, stories you have. Where do you get your ideas for both the songs and the stories?
Just life, just life. As far as professional storytelling goes, the first storytelling festival, of course, was the National in Jonesboro in 1973. Until the mid 1990s, all stories told at storytelling festivals were folk tales. And then in the mid 90s, a lady got up and told a story about her mama, and it just set the woods on fire. And now about 95% of stories are personal stories. Because, I mean, folk tales are wonderful, and I'm a big fan of folk tales. But not many people have killed a dragon, but everybody's had a bicycle wreck. So people sort of identify with that. What we do, I think, as storytellers is we elicit emotion. We're just trying to make people feel their own lives. If you look at your audience and they may have their eyes closed and they're sort of doing this, they're just seeing the movie. They're going, yeah, I did that. I remember that. And it's like the great Donald Davis says, the reason that people are laughing at us is not because they think we're so funny. They're laughing to say, yes, I've been there.
Oh, great.
Aha. It's more the aha laugh than the ha ha laugh.
So, are you still writing songs and stories?
Always. Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
And let me ask you about that.
Morning.
In terms of the writing and singing, is that something you do in case any storytellers are listening? Do you do that every day on a regular basis to get like up in the morning and write for 2 hours every day, or how do you do
I'm
that?
not on the road, and of course, since the pandemic, none of us are on the road like we used to be. I used to sleep in 250 different beds a year. So you write driving a motorhome, or you write in an airport or in a motel room. But the analogy I make in workshops is you don't catch fish every time you go to the river, but if you quit going to the river, you never catch fish. So the only way that creative people, in my opinion, the only way it works is go and sit and assume the position and give it time. And what I do is I put my guitar in my lap, I start noodling around, an idea might come, but if it doesn't come in an hour, at least I've practiced the guitar for an hour. But the thing about it is the process, I think to all of us who create art, whether you're a painter or whatever, the process is what it is. The creation of the art, that's a whole different thing than the performance. The performance is fun and it's a reward. But I think everybody that writes, that creates, it's that time alone that you discover and find out, well, what about if, well, that doesn't, and learning to self-edit and all those things. And then putting it in front of an audience, because I mean, as much experience as so many of us have that have been doing this as long as we have, you pretty much know when you're starting out if there's going to be something there. But the acid test is always the audience. The audience tells you everything you need to know about what you've created.
But something that you said raises a question I have, Michael. So you were saying you have the guitar and you're strumming along. Hopefully, you're not doing that while you're driving, also, or.
Typically not, no.
Oh, okay, guys. A little
Might
concerned.
work with a harmonica, but not.
Okay. And Chuck, I'll put you on the spot. Same question. So Michael has obviously more experience than you do in storytelling, but how do you get your ideas?
Well, first of all, I agree wholeheartedly with everything Michael just said about the value and the audience reaction of a personal story as opposed to a folk story, a folk tale. And again, like Michael said, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just we're finding that the audience reaction to personal stories is just so much stronger. Now, what was the question again, Blaine?
How do you get your ideas from? Stories?
From my life. It's just very, very simple. I've had a very unusual and interesting life. And right now I'm actually working on a memoir based on one event that's very deeply personal and all the attributes from that experience that have made me who I am today and along the way. And that's the power of storytelling is also very therapeutic for self. So whether it's Michael or me or any storyteller, as you're developing the story, you're digging inside you. And that can be very revelatory. So my ideas just spring from my favorite is my mother-in-law story about Gertie. She was just an incredible woman, and you laugh and you cry, and more importantly, it's very hard for me to hold back the tears, even though Gertie's been gone for more than 43 years. But the personal stories, it's just from life. I just developed another one about working for a guy that most people have heard of, a guy named John Peterman, who was
Okay.
Jay Peterman on Seinfeld, and I've stories about my family, stories about a health condition, which is the one that was very difficult. But the reward is not from me. The reward comes, just like Michael said, from the audience. This one time I told a story about that medical condition, and it's a mental health story. And a woman from the back row with two crutches came hobbling down in tears, and she said she has MS. And for the first time in her life, she felt free from stigma, self imposed stigma that she had been carrying with her because she was different. That's why I tell that story and other stories. It's not for me, it's the connection, it's bringing people together. And like Michael said, it's aha, not ha ha ha.
And
The
Michael, if I
biggest,
can ask you maybe one final question
sure.
before we run out of time here. In terms of folks who see you in the audience and folks you speak to, I assume from time to time people want to get into storytelling or
Yeah.
you motivate them. And the question I have then is if somebody's listening or comes to the show at Weaveville, what advice do you have to them if they want to get into storytelling?
Uh, if they're from the area, they should find out about the Asheville Storytelling Circle or the Jonesboro Guild in Jonesboro, Tennessee. Those are two of the most active storytelling guilds, and their meetings are just all about storytelling, telling stories. Anybody wants to tell a story, if you want to critique or not, that sort of thing. But you're with like-minded people who will tell you everything that they know about it, and just being among storytellers is the way that you grow. And again, a lot of the festivals that we do have workshops, uh, and John C. Campbell Folk School. I do a week long there in the mountains. There at several places. There are excuse me, week long workshops you can get into.
And
But the
so,
main thing, yeah, Wild Acres. But the main thing is just getting into a guild wherever you are, like-minded people, and just there's nothing like being with if you're a chess player, you want to be around chess players. If you're a bass fisherman, you want to hang out with those people. If you're a storyteller, you want to be around storytellers. And when you go to a meeting at Jonesboro or Asheville, that's what it's 100%. Here's what we're here for.
and when you begin, start volunteering to tell some stories, how long are the stories in the beginning if you've never done this before? How long
Well,
is a story?
typically at the Asheville circle, it was always 10 minutes, which is plenty of time. I mean, if you've got a good 3-minute story to begin with, that's really good. So it's sort of a 10-minute limit, and that forces you to not just ramble. It makes you learn to self-edit. Do I need to say any more about that? No. Move on. That sort of thing.
By the way, one quick interjection. When I teach, I call the self editing killing your darlings. Because typically, what you have to do, you have to get rid of stuff that isn't germane to the main point. And oftentimes, those are your darlings. Those are your best words you've ever come up with. But you have to cut them.
And the nice thing, I guess, Chuck, too, if you're going too long, or you can address this, Michael, somebody will come with a hook and tell you get off the stage
Well,
at
like
some
I
point.
say, at Jonesboro, when you get to the highest level of storytelling, you got 30 minutes, but on your schedule it says 27 because it takes 3 minutes to introduce you. That's how tight it can get. But that's at the top level. But again, it's all learning to respect what you're doing, learning to respect who's on after you. if the program is 30 minutes and I go 40 minutes, I've just stolen 10 minutes of your time. So you learn that, you learn. That's the whole thing about going to guilds, is you learn the craft as well as get to hang out with like-minded people and talk about what you love.
Anyway, I'd like to thank you, Michael Reno Harold, for being my guest on this Blaine's World podcast. Also, as always, Chuck Fink, my good friend. Thanks for helping arrange this. I'd like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And Chuck, I'll give you the final word, believe it or not. One last time about the Weaverville show, dates, times, how to get tickets.
Yes. The show is April the 20th from 7 to 8:30 at the Weaverville Community Center at 60 Lakeshore Drive in Weaverville. But to get there, to make sure you can get in, because the demand is going to be so great, we have an Eventbrite website, and at 11 o'clock on April the 1st, and this isn't April Fool's, this is for real, at 11 o'clock, you want to go on that site and get your reserve ticket. It's free, but in order to get in, that you'll get in, it's wise to have that ticket. And that link, I believe, is on the Entertainment Facebook page, and it's also on my Facebook page, which is Chuck Fink Storyteller. So we encourage everybody to check it out and go on at 11 o'clock, or you might be too late if you go on at 11:05.
And Michael, I forgot to ask you, but same question. If folks want to find out more about you or to hear about your upcoming gigs and stuff, what's the best way to get information?
MichaelReno.com, MichaelReno, just like Nevada. .com, and of course Facebook and YouTube, all that.
You'll find it. Thanks, guys. You were great. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Blaine. Thanks for having us. Bye. Take care, Michael.